Let me introduce you to Mill Rodan, the deck that I took to the Atlanta Major Regional. I ended up finishing in 28th place out of 182 players. I had 5 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. I made a couple misplays, had a couple bad matchups, so I ended up bubbling out of the top 16, falling short of my ultimate goal, but still a respectable showing. It was doing extremely well in testing, and I'm very, very proud of the deck. I think it's a ton of fun to play. And if you've never played a mill deck or a ultra control, very defensive deck, then I highly encourage maybe giving it a go if this feels like your type of thing. Now, I'm not going to do a deck profile in the traditional sense where I just show you the attacks, I show you the assets, I show you the actions, I show you the foundations. Instead, I'm going to do kind of like a story here in 6 different parts. So I'll start with the main idea, which is the bulk of the deck. Your main idea should always be the bulk of your deck. And then each little stack of cards here represents a different section of the story that I'll tell in this deck profile. But first of all, why Mill Rodan? Why did I take Rodan and make him into a mill character? If you watched my stream a couple weeks ago when I was prepping for Atlanta, and if somebody beat me, they won a challenger deck off of me, the Dark Hero Challenger Series deck. I was playing a very, very different version of Void Rodan. And I did decently well in that testing session, but it just wasn't feeling like enough. Not like it was quite there. It didn't feel like a regional winning deck. And George on my team, George Zhang, he did make top 8 with Mothra. Just an absolute genius. He said, I think you're playing Void Rodan too aggressively. And that's really not the playstyle of Void when it comes to Rodan. And so I realized, yeah, I think George is right. I need to either go full aggro or I need to go full control. And I'm trying to be way too in the middle here. So I ended up just taking it so far control that my primary win con with this deck is by mill. I am not primarily looking to kill my rival, although that is a backup plan. Sometimes your rival will flail so hard into you that they just leave themselves open, and even a deck like this that's not trying to kill them ends up killing them. I think I ended up killing about half of my rivals in the games that I won in Atlanta, but I milled out the other half. The mill is the primary win con of the deck, and Rodan runs mill really well because, first of all, he just lends himself to a control play style. He can give -3 or -4 speed to all of your rivals' moves. He's a 7-hander, so he can block for forever. For some reason, he has more health than most 7-handers. He can look at the top 4 cards of his deck and reorder them so that he can make sure that he draws the good ones and that he checks 5s. Just an incredible character for this kind of strategy. I tested out a similar concept with King Ghidorah, but I wasn't having as much success in setting up an impenetrable wall. That's really what you need if you're going to go for a mill strategy. Number one, of course, you need to be removing things or forcing them to mill from the top of their deck. But number two, you need to never die. And a lot of times that's going to be over several attack turns. I found myself most of the times having to block like 2 extremely crazy attack turns in order to mill out a rival, right? There's like that initial outburst that most decks will get put out. Like, okay, this is my kill turn. I've got 5 attacks. I'm going to go in for it. You have to survive that. And then post-cycle, when they realize that all you're trying to do is milling them, then what they do is they save up their attacks and they start to really, really sculpt for that lethal turn. And then you have to survive a second outburst. After the second outburst, they've really punched themselves out. They've gone through their deck so much. We've removed so many attacks that they can no longer survive. But there's going to be 2 major turns per game that you have to survive. An initial one and then a later, more sculpted version of that. The hope is that by the time the later one comes, you have also sculpted a very defensive hand as Rodan. So enough of the intro here. Let me get into the main idea. The main idea is that Void has tons of cards that remove our rivals' attacks specifically, so that by the time they cycle, we've typically removed on average about 5 attacks from the game. That means it's going to be harder for them to find attacks post-cycle, and they're going to be going through their deck even faster. And every time they cycle, it's going to get harder and harder to find attacks, and so they're drawing more and more cards, but they're doing it in a futile attempt. Removing attacks also means that future turns are going to be less scary because you can remove the scary attacks. You know, is there a specific deadlock piece? Like maybe like a vile seizing or a high velocity slice. Like, yeah, we got to get these out of the game because these are going to hurt us. Or maybe like major throws like Colossus Titan attacks. Um, we have lots of throw hate in this deck, but not an infinite number of throw hate. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and get these big throws out of the way. Maybe we just hate Ravages of War. Like, you can selectively remove these scary attacks. Like for example, with like Pony. Hey, let's get rid of all of their Falling Skies. You know, this is by far their biggest damage move. We'll let them have their Electric Moths, you know, their 4 damage moves, because if they crack our wall and hit us with 4 damage, well, we can survive that. But let's remove all of the scary stuff. Okay, so we got an 86 card deck total. And you will reliably, with this deck, mill out your rival if they have an 85 card or less deck. So if their deck size is equal to or lower than yours, you're probably going to be able to mill them out. Now, we're not going to be able to mill out 100 card decks or 120 card decks, but who really plays those anyway? It's like the Carson Panos, George Zangs of the world that are playing those types of decks, but the vast majority of players are playing very clean 60 to 70 card decks, and we're going to mill those players out very, very quickly. Okay, so let's get to the cards that are removing our rivals' attacks. First off, we have 3 copies of Genkai's Guidance. Just a 1 diff. We play it. We remove their attack from their game. We're going to keep this for like the attacks that are going to get really, really big. You know, the attacks that are going to cost us a lot of defensive resources to handle. Hey, let's go ahead and remove it. This also is going to take place before the blitz step. So like an attack like Unexpected Outcomes, for example, would be a great one to use Genkai's Guidance on. I don't want them to look at my hand and remove an attack from my hand. So we're just going to go ahead and hit them with the Genkai's Guidance. 3 copies of it. Next up, 2 copies of Hold Hostage. This, to me, is my favorite card in the entire game of Universus at the moment. I was playing a Hold Hostage Toya. I think I made a deck profile on it where I won a local qualifier or a local championship with a couple months back. I love this card, and it is so powerful right now. You just play Hold Hostage. You say, hey, show me your hand, and you get to remove the most scary thing. And then you can plan your blocks and everything to make sure that you never take damage. If you do take damage, they can destroy a foundation to get it back. But with this deck, with how defensive we are, they're only getting their card back about 10% of the time. Like 90% of the time, this Hold Hostage is very, very successful. If you're worried about it, like if you're worried like, okay, this is the turn that I have to defend. On the turn that you have to defend, and remember, there's going to be 2 of these major turns where your rival just slings 6 to 7 attacks at you, and you have to successfully survive. A lot of times, you're going to have to choose one of those attacks to take, and you want to take, the smallest attack. So perhaps their first attack is the attack that you're okay taking, and you recognize that this is them going all out on a kill turn. Well, then you can take the first attack and then Hold Hostage and then look at their hand. That way they never get their attack back. But most of the time, I'm using Hold Hostage on their very first attack, and then I can use cards like Battle for Dominance to remove Hold Hostage and then draw. You can do that with Genkai's Guidance or Hold Hostage since they stay in your card pool. Next up, we have 4 copies of Confused. This foundation is so powerful right now in this meta. It says flip, remove. Sorry, let me get this nice on camera. Remove 1 attack from your rival's discard pile and choose one of his keyword. This attack loses that keyword and cannot gain keywords. Okay, so we can remove throws from attacks. This is another piece of throw hate. We can remove EX or powerful. We could even remove shift. If we don't want Colossus Titan attacks to turn to make us discard 2 and flip 2, we can even remove shift. There's so many good things that this is removing, but the best card that it's removing is Risky Encounter. We saw a Risky Encounter combined firepower deck from Kevin Broberg actually take down the entire event. Risky Encounter was everywhere in Atlanta, and Confused simply saying, hey, flip, get rid of that Risky. That is so, so, so worth it. So we're running it at 4x. It selectively removes their best attack from their discard pile, or it stops a keyword, or it gets rid of an attack that they could play from their discard pile, like Risky Encounter. Then we have 4 copies of Dimensional Sphere. This says before the damage step, you get to remove it from the game. So it's an Omni block and it's throw hate, and it's going to take that attack out for the rest of the game. Then we have Tri Gravity Beam, 3 copies. Everybody knows this card by now. if we have 2 other attacks in our card pool, we can look at our rival's hand and selectively remove an attack. Now remember, you're going to have to survive 2 major kill turns from your rival. And a lot of times you can tell that they're sculpting attacks, right? You and your rival start playing back and forth. Hey, I'll build 2 pass, I'll build 2 pass, I'll build 2 pass, and you can just tell that they're sculpting attacks against you. Well, then it might be worth it to send some cheap attacks their way, followed by a Tri-Gravity Beam, just to look at their hand and remove the most scary attack out of their hand. It can absolutely devastate somebody sculpting, especially if you have 2 of these things in your hand. Next up, 2 copies of Unexpected Outcomes. Very similar to Tri-Gravity Beam. We play it, we say, show me your hand, I'm going to remove a card from it, and then I can play it as that attack. It's really funny when both of you are in major deadlock and you remove a deadlock card. Like if you remove like a high velocity slice and now you get that deadlock enhance, or you remove a vile seizing and you get that deadlock enhance. I even had one time where against a smiling, I played Unexpected Outcomes. Actually, it was Andrew Porat. Drew and I played like a week before the event, and his smiling, he ended up getting 2nd place. And there was a time where we played. I think I won that 2-1, but I did get some lucky, like drawing the answer that I needed off the top of my deck. So if we play another time, there's a good chance Drew actually beats me. But like I just top decked some answers, got very, very lucky. But there was one time I played Unexpected Outcomes. I looked at Drew's hand and he had an Unexpected Outcomes, and I got to remove his Unexpected Outcomes and then just play it again. And then I actually tried to get lethal that turn. But we're looking at their hand, we're removing something. Now, yes, this is very, very expensive. But remember, we are building up a massive stage because we're setting up a defensive wall that cannot be penetrated. And so late game, you can play this on a 9. If you check a 5, pass it, commit 4. Committing 4 to remove their best thing from their hand is very, very worth it. Or if you check a 3, just pass your turn. Just say, yeah, I failed, pass my turn. Also, this has other applications in the deck that I'll get into a little down the line. This has defensive and offensive applications that are not very obvious and not actually coming from playing it as an attack. We'll get into that in a little bit. Then the MVP of the deck, we have Lurker's Strike. This says that for every type of card you reviewed, you get to do something. So if we review, and I know that you probably can't read this right now, so I'll read it for you. If you reviewed an action, you get to draw a card. Now look, we're already playing a lot of actions. We're playing 10 actions in the deck, actually. So you get to just draw. So now it's just a 4-diff, 3-4 draw. If you reviewed an asset, you remove 2 cards from your rival's discard pile. Now we are playing 9 assets in an 86 card deck. So there's a very good chance that we can review an asset to start the turn, and then we're removing 2 cards from our rival's discard pile. In my round 1 game, my opponent was playing a risky encounter deck. I think by turn 4, I had removed all of his risky encounters. I had used Lurker Strike plus Confused, and he just had no more risky encounters for the rest of the game. I never had to worry about it. It was awesome. If you review an attack, your rival can discard a card. This can be great on like turn 2 when you're reviewing attacks because you want to play foundations, but your rival, you can tell, built all their foundations and is only holding attacks. Well, hey, play this, discard your attack. I did that in a couple games this weekend. If you're reviewed a foundation, you get to build the next foundation you play this turn. That one's not too great. And then our last removal card here is 4 copies of Cape of No Return. You might say, but David, this is a unique 3 difficulty asset. Do you really want to be 4Xing this? Do you want to see multiple of this in your hand? And the answer is heck yes. I want to see this every single turn of the game. It is so powerful. Hey, yeah, remove it. They have to be playing some sort of asset hate to get around this card. There's not a ton of assets hate, like we got Hacker Extraordinaire, Pass Through Walls, maybe that we need to worry about. But the vast majority of decks struggle with this, especially the Smiling Titan decks. They have Koenma's Task to stop our actions. But Koenma's Task is not going to stop this asset. And we want to use it, and then we want to find another and build it again. Also, if we get stuck with 2 in hand, we'll play 1, we'll keep 1, because remember, we're playing a mill deck where we're trying to create a defensive wall. We are not out to kill our rivals. A lot of our turns, the vast majority of our turns, are purely build turns. We're not even sending out any attacks. We're building 1 to 3 cards. We're holding everything else for blocks. So hold the Cape of No Return in your hand. If you don't need to block with it, right? If your rival is just also building and sculpting into you, then you can review it, and now your Lurker Strike is online. So we love it. We always want to see Cape of No Return. 4 copies of it. This is 26 cards in our 86 card deck. That's over 30% that say remove an attack specifically from our rival. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Lurker's Strike, because that's where I'm going to take our story next. Let's pack these ones up and get into the assets. How do we make sure that we always review assets so that we can be removing cards with Lurker Strike? Well, we're playing 4 copies of Cape of No Return, but we're also playing 2 copies of Golden Death. This is an asset that says it's a 1 difficulty, 2 mid-block, 5 check asset. On our rival's turn, we can remove a card in their hand if there's 2 or more attacks in their card pool. But they get to choose the removal. I am almost never using this for this enhance. I'm always using it for the form. Remove, name a card type, then reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add all of those to your hand, and discard the rest. It is amazing in a deck like this to build Golden Death, like on turn 2 or turn 1, and then the next turn you can say form. Yeah, show me the top 3 cards and I'll name Foundation. There were several times during the weekend where I would use this and I would just get to draw 3 foundations, and then I can have like I'll build 6 and I'll keep 4 in hand, like just something incredible like that. Or I'll build 5 and I still have 5 in hand because now I'm a 10-hander instead of a 7-hander. It's also just a solid block to keep, and then we can, if they don't attack into us, we can review it out, and now Lurker Strike is online. We're also playing 2 copies of Vertical Maneuvering Equipment. We are going to end up having momentum sometimes just from sending out small pokes like Lurker Strike. Like, we're not looking to do damage. We're just looking to like remove their stuff. So if we get like a poke in, this momentum is very, very nice for the -3 speed, and to change its zone, it's also a nice 1 mid block. We can't leave home without Vertical Maneuvering Equipment. And then last, we have League of Villains Bar. Pay no attention to all the text on this card on the response because we don't care about it. We really just don't care about it. It's all about this static. While this card is ready in your stage, attacks get -1 speed. Again, we are not looking to kill our rival, so who cares if our attacks get -1 speed? But if we build this, then we're saying for the remainder of the game, all of our rival attacks come in with -1 speed. It's awesome. Also, Deadlock Enhance, commit, add your attack to your hand. It feels great to play Tri-Gravity Beam, say, show me your hand, I'll remove something. Deadlock, commit, pick up Tri-Gravity Beam, play it again, show me your hand, I'll remove something. Or you can just Deadlock, play a Lurker Strike twice, and remove 4 cards from our rival's discard pile. Also, we do not have to remove attacks with Lurker Strike. We can even remove their combined firepowers if we want to. So between these 5 assets and the 4 capes, we have tons of assets, and that way we can always be reviewing it. What if we didn't review an asset, but we draw a Titan Cliff and we drew an asset? Well, then what we can do is use Titan Cliff, and we can say discard up to 3 cards and draw 1 card for each card discarded. The discarded cards count as being reviewed. So if we drew an asset plus Titan Cliff plus Lurker Strike, we can play the Titan Cliff, discard the asset with it to draw, and now we can play Lurker Strike. And sometimes now we're getting to do 2 or 3 things with Lurker Strike. Like now we can play Lurker Strike and we can say, I'll draw, you'll discard, and I'll remove. We can just start doing a ton of stuff. This is also a 5 speed, 6 damage move. This is going to help our deck in other ways similar to Unexpected Outcomes. I'll get to that in a little bit whenever we get to a little bit later in the story. And it can build a 6 check from our discard pile. So I do want to play a couple 6 checks. I don't love the 6 checks on Void, so I'm playing 1 copy of 3 Eyes, 1 copy of Ultra Regen. It says draw 2, gain 2 if you take 5 or more. 3 Eyes says we can commit it, change the zone of our rival's attack. Get to look at a card from their hand and peek the top card of both decks. Most of the time, it's just used for that zone change. Hey, I need to full block everything. You have a high attack, I have a low block in hand, commit 3 Eyes of Hiei. Now you might say, wait a second, you're 4xing Titan Cliff and you're only playing 2 6 checks? Isn't that crazy? And the answer is no, because most of the time when we draw Titan Cliff, we're not even playing it. We're just holding it for a 2 low block, right? Like the vast majority of the time, we're just building and passing. Again, we are not trying to kill our rival, so we're not going to play like we are. We are just trying to mill them. The Titan Cliff is here purely to make Lurker Strike more consistent. I would say that I get at least one Lurker Strike to remove 2 cards from my rival's discard pile in about 67% of my games. So it's decently consistent. You're not going to get it off every game. That's just, how it works. It's an 86 card deck. But about 67% of the time, you'll get at least one off. And then about 33% of the time, you'll get double Lurker Strike off. When you get double Lurker Strike off, like plus a Confused, when you can remove like 10 attacks before they cycle, it is just over. They will never find attacks to kill you again. And the attacks that you left them with are their bad attacks. They're like their little like 4/4 draw card. You're like, oh, okay, you're going to draw more foundations and just mill yourself faster. So 2/6 checks is enough. By the time I was finding that about 80% of the time I was building a 6 check-in with Titan Cliff. And then you can always just destroy them from your stage to build them again at a later turn. So this is all based around making Lurker Strike very, very consistent. Okay, that is the core idea of the deck. Remove all of their attacks, mill them out. Now we need to survive. Let's get to the survival aspect. First of all, the boogeyman of the format is Smiling Titan. There's no question about it. We need to survive Smiling. Not only do we need to survive Smiling early, but we need to survive like 10 turns of Smiling Titan, right? And every time they're going to send out 1 or 2 attacks that are just massive. Now, later on in the game, post turn 5, we're going to be able to block 2 of those attacks probably quite easily. But we need more answers beyond that. Now, we already have Cape of No Return, Genkai's Guidance, Hold Hostage in here that all not only remove attacks, but they're also Smiling Titan answers. But we also have 4 copies of Barrier Shield, taking the speed to 0. And then if we block, we get a Breaker 2. This is going to stop a lot of early turn aggression just from the Breaker 2. But later on in the game, it's going to stop a lot of things like, massive Armor of the Wolves coming from Amajiki, anything massive stats from like Black Abyss, Hawks making something super, super fast, then you're going to need your Barrier Shields. And I also have, and this is the secret Smiling tech, is Dash Toward Disaster. Now remember, Smiling Titan is getting to use Koenma's task to cancel actions. So we need to have non-action answers. And 4 Cape of No Returns is not enough when we need to survive forever. Well, a permanent on-stage solution to Smiling Titan is Dash Towards Disaster. It says, commit, discard an attack. This attack gets -X speed. X equals the printed speed of the discarded card. So remember how earlier I showed you that we were playing 2 copies of Unexpected Outcomes, this 9 difficulty 4-check card? Well, look at its printed speed. It's 10 printed speed. So if we have this in stage and we have an Unexpected Outcomes in hand, we can say commit, discard -10 speed. Yeah, your 12 speed move is now a 2 speed move. So in addition to Unexpected Outcomes, we are also running 1 copy of Attack Titan or Armor Titan Attacks, which is 8 speed. So we can discard it for -8 speed and then check out its block modifier is a 4 mid block. This is a downside to this attack in most situations, but in Rodan, it's an upside because now we commit this and now we just stacked our discard pile with a 4 block mod that we can remove with Rodan for -4 speed, effectively -12 speed from these 2 things combined. And then we are running 2 copies of Death from Above, very, very similar, 4 mid block that we can discard, stack our deck with, and 6 speed. So between Rodan and this with Death from Above, you're talking about -10 speed. Death from Above also says remove an attack from your discard pile. This attack gets X damage. X equals the removed attack's printed damage. So if we remove with Death from Above an Armored Titan or an Unexpected Outcomes, we are getting 8 damage. We are making this an 11 damage move. So these big attacks are helpful for Dash Towards Disaster for big minus speed, and they're helpful for big plus damage. And this is also where Titan Cliff comes in handy, is because in a pinch, Titan Cliff works almost just as well. Let me go find it. Titan Cliff works almost just as well because it's 5 base speed and 6 base damage. So we could remove a Titan Cliff, make this thing 9 damage, or with this, we could discard a Titan Cliff for -5 speed. That's very, very good. So that's our secret tech for Smiling Titan, that when we have this on stage, these massive speed attacks, just between Barrier Shield and this and Rodan's massive speed reduction on face, they're going to have a hard time sending those through. This also is one of our best deadlocks. Clear one attack from your card pool and draw one card. Now remember, you only do as much as you can do on an ability. So even if we're not attacking on a turn, if our opponent's in deadlock, we can just say commit draw. And then you can just build even more cards or hold more blocks in hand. I had this at a 2 to start with. I liked it so much, I took it to a 3, and that was the right decision. So that is our Smiling Titan tech, Barrier Shield, Dash, and these high-speed moves, in addition to Genkai's Guidance, Cape of No Return, and Hold Hostage type things. Because Hold Hostage is so nice against Smiling Titan. They are not drawing a lot of cards. You know, they're playing these big chunky moves and they're just counting on you can't block 2 of them or you can't block 3 of them. But with the Hold Hostage, you just annihilate their hand. Okay, now if we're going to establish a defensive wall that our opponent can't break through, we can't just rely on the speed hate of Rodan. We need even more speed hate. So we are 4xing Incubating. We can remove a card from our discard pile, and then that attack gets -1 speed. We can do this on every single attack. Yes, we are milling ourselves by doing this, by removing cards, but we're removing cards from our rival faster, and they're normally playing a smaller deck size, so it's not such a big deal. And again, there's typically 2 big attack turns that you have to survive, and Incubating is going to be very, very key to surviving those big attack turns. Next up, 3 copies of Rifle Arm. -3 speed to their first attack. We love this against Smiling. We typically want to block the first one, maybe block the second one, and then Genkai's Guidance or Cape of No Return the third one. 3 copies of Evasive Maneuver. Commit for -2 speed. But if it's a low attack, it gets -3 speed. One of my favorite plays with this was to use the, let's go find it, was to use like 3 Eyes of Hiei, make their attack a low, and then now that their attack is a low, this is -3 speed instead of -2 speed. Next up, Aaron's Sidestep. I'm playing 1 copy of this because I found a platinum copy of it in my collection, and I thought it looks really pretty. And it goes along with the deck. You flip for -2 speed, and if it's completely blocked, you draw a card. And then we have Averse to Water. It's -2 speed, like Evasive Maneuver, except this time it's a low block. And it says -1 damage to water attacks, which sometimes actually matters if our opponent is playing like Falling Skies, for example, which is a water attack that's a throw. And sometimes that -1 damage actually saves you. So 1 copy of Averse to Water. We don't need a ton of speed hate because, again, Rodan's so good at it, and we have speed answers like Dash and Barrier Shield. But these are really going to help us block those string decks, especially those string decks like Ryukyu, where they are consistently giving lots of speed to their attacks. Now let's talk about defensive draw. We're going to be needing to draw a lot of blocks, and it starts with Supersonic Flight. If we remove this card, we get to respond and draw. Again, we're playing 4 copies of Incubating, so we can selectively remove this from our discard pile with Incubating, even if it's not the top card in our discard pile. But we also have ways to make it the top card of our discard pile. We can find ways to discard it or destroy it, and then stack it and remove it. So that's primarily why it's there. Sometimes this destroy, change it to high, it gets +2, +3. Sometimes we use this on defense, even though it's giving them stats. Maybe changing the block zone to something that you have in hand matters more than giving them 2 speed when you already reduce so much speed. Because if you do destroy it, it's like, okay, it gave them 2 speed, but you also stacked your discard pile with a 4 block mod. So you're going to say -4 speed. So if you had a 2 block mod on top of your deck, then effectively you changed the zone to high by destroying this, and you didn't actually suffer anything on the speed. Or we can use this on offense if we're actually trying to kill them. You know, if they attacked into you so hard that they left themselves open. And even a deck like this that's not trying to kill, you know, we played 21 attacks in this 86 card deck, but 5 of them are basically defensive actions like Dimensional Sphere. And so there's really only 16 attacks. That's like a sub 20% attack ratio. But sometimes we just kind of, you know, our rival just lets us kill them. 3 copies of Hacker Extraordinaire. Vertical maneuvering equipment is everywhere in the format right now. Ryukyu loves it. I need a way to get rid of that permanent type of asset. Like I could play like a 6-check pass-through walls, but that's good for like those powerful one-time assets like Cape of No Return. But I honestly don't care if they have a Cape of No Return out. I'm not trying to kill them. I'm trying to mill them. But I do care if they have an offensive, repeatable asset out like vertical maneuvering equipment. Also, Hacker Extraordinaire is going to help us turn our momentum into draw power, which is very, very nice. If sometimes we're going to have to take an attack, and now we can turn that into momentum too with Hacker. Then we have 4 copies of Botan's Coaching. Just flip, discard 1, draw 1. I love getting to discard like a Armored Titan attacks to stack our discard pile with a 4 block modifier. Also, we can Rodan, look at the top card of our deck, and draw it. That's the secret power of Rodan, is if we have all this draw power in our stage, we're getting to stack our deck. We're always getting to draw the good ones. So, man, you know, a Genkai's Guidance is really what I need to survive. Well, let's see if the top 4 cards of our deck have a single copy of Genkai's Guidance. You know, there's a good chance it does. Or maybe a Barrier Shield. Or like, I need to draw some sort of hand trap answer here. Good chance I'm going to be able to do it. 4 copies of Battle for Dominance. Remove a card from your card pool and then draw. I love this with Genkai's Guidance and Hold Hostage. Typically, those really hurt you in the sense that they clog your card pool. But now we're getting to draw, and we're getting to effectively say -1 speed for the rest of this turn. 2 copies of Saving Bakugo. We need Flip Hate because, again, we're playing these hackers because of Ryukyu, but Ryukyu also plays Dragon Strike, and they're always going to go after our hackers to keep their VMEs. Well, if we have Saving Bakugo, we say, no, let's unflip our hacker, and we get to draw a card. This is also very good against Colossus Titan attacks, which all the Smiling Titans like to play. So they'll play their Colossus Titan, they get to build it down. Now they're going to tell us to flip 2 and discard 2. And so we can flip Saving Bakugo as one of those 2, and draw a card and replenish our hand somewhat. Then 1 copy of Idlework, destroy a foundation. If this attack deals no damage, draw 1 card and discard 1 card. It's a way to draw during the turn. Now, we're not increasing our hand size, but we're just filtering our hand. But the big benefit of Idlework is, number 1, we can go, you know, if we don't want to get stuck with like 20 foundations and not be able to destroy them, so that we can last longer than our rival and mill them out and not accidentally mill ourselves. And number 2, we get to stack our discard pile with a block modifier. That's good. So if we have a Supersonic built and we have Idlework, we can destroy the Supersonic Flight, remove it, and then draw a card and get the -4 speed. So lots of draw power in our foundations here. Let's go to the last part of this 6-part story, and that's just miscellaneous. So we have the Dimensional Spheres, we have the Capes, we have the Genkai's Guidances. All of these are like pseudo throw hate. But let's go ahead and play 2 copies of Mikasa Defeats the Female Titan. It's throw hate. It also makes sure we always have the right zone. It's a 3 block mod, so it's good when it's on top of our discard pile. 1 copy of Blue Flame Surge, very, very similar. Omni block that says Breaker 1, add a momentum to your hand. Just 1 copy there. And then we get into cancels. When our opponent's in deadlock, a lot of times there's something that we would really love to like cancel and flip, especially like a repeatable deadlock foundation ability that they have in their stage. Like, for example, Without a Vision was a powerful one that I went up against. But it has this deadlock response, flip after your rival plays an ability on a non-character card in their stage, cancel it and flip that card. It's also a 4 block mod, which is good for Rodan. And then this response says that you can commit down something at the start of their turn that gives speed. So one of my favorite things to take down with this is quick response. Even if they're not in deadlock, at least we can commit the quick response and not let them get those +2 speeds to everything. Or like Ryukyu, for example, maybe they're playing like Talented Baker, or they're playing Dragon Power. These things are just going to give +1 speed throughout the turn. We can go ahead and commit them down. Maybe Toga 3 is playing like Draw Your Swords or Deft Maneuvers. There's so many powerful things that you want to use Proud Scion on. And it just has that amazing deadlock and a block mod. I started with 0 of this actually at the beginning of creating this deck. Then I put 1 in, and then I loved it so much I put 2 in. 3 copies of Keeping Aries Safe. Toga 3 we know is a very popular character and that she's going to be out there. And so this allows us to survive those stun heavy decks and keep our stage ready. And then I have 1 copy of Fruit of Our Labors. Remove, discard 2 cards from our card pool. There's going to be those 2 turns that we need to survive where there's going to throw 6 attacks at us. And so sometimes we have like 5 cards in our card pool. It's really nice to take 2 of them out. Also, this deadlock, forcing our rival to build a card from their hand. Again, if they're sculpting, we can sometimes sniff out that all they have in their hand is attacks. And by deadlock forming, we get them to get rid of an attack. And then 1 copy of Combined Firepower. This is primarily just in here for defense. It's one copy, so that sometimes we have a mid block in our discard pile that we can always block with. That doesn't count towards progressive. Sometimes we'll use it on offense when we're actually killing them because they've punched themselves out so much. But it's primarily just in there to have a mid block in our discard pile. So those were the miscellaneous cards. And that is the deck. That is Mill Rodan. Now, there's some things that I would change. I would normally show you guys my sideboard, but my sideboard doesn't matter because I was literally only playing one game. Mill Rodan reduces a round of universes to a game of one and not a round and not 3 games, because your first game is going to take you 40 to 50 minutes. And then what you want to do is just take a knee, right? Like in football, just take a knee, run out the clock, don't let them kill you, and you're going to win the round 1-0. That's what you're going for. Just win game 1, win or lose the die roll. You're going to win game 1. And then you are going to take a knee on the football and run out the clock. So you're reducing a round of 3 to a game of 1, which means that your sideboard is not really that important because it doesn't matter. Like I did have a sideboard. I was citing in some extra stuff for smiling, like something to cancel an action. What is it? Stopping for breakfast to cancel an action. Maybe like that card that says they can't draw for that attack until it resolves, and then we have all sorts of ways to remove it and make it never resolve. I had some of those things. I had like another combined firepower if I needed to get more aggressive, or if I just really, if I was going against like a mid attack tribal deck, then it might be really nice to have that in discard pile. Like if you're going against the Hawks and they're playing all these feathers, you need to have lots of mid blocks because they have ways to play their feathers, pick up their feathers. So that can be pretty important. But by and large, the sideboard is useless because you're only playing one game. One change that I would make to the list, I would probably have taken out one of the Hacker Extraordinaires and put in a Masho Concealment. I found myself pretty often wanting to cancel things that my rival was doing in their stage, and I'm really lacking for cancels in this list. I had thought about putting one in pre-event, but I thought, no, I don't want to take down the consistency too much. Give me 3 hackers. But I think I would either take out 1 Dash Towards Disaster or 1 hacker and put in at least 1 Masho Concealment. You might even put in 2 copies of Masho Concealment. Maybe just take out like a Verse to Water or something like that, and get a Masho Concealment in. So that's my like main wish of the deck. But this was very, very consistent in testing. I could run through all of my games. I probably played 30 games of testing. I was pretty even versus Smiling. I was like 2-0 versus Toga 1. I was like 4-0 versus Pony. I was like 2-0 versus Ryukyu. I was 2-1 versus Toga 3. Those are the ones I can remember off the top of my head, but was having a lot of success in testing. I think if we play Atlanta back again, I think this deck is actually a very good call for the meta, and I think it probably tops 80% of the time. Like I said, I made a couple just dumb misplays. I'm always good for 1 or 2 of those every event. That I've just kind of accepted that almost as a fact of life for me. Like, okay, David, you're going to misplay once or twice, but can you recover from that and top cut anyway? And the answer was no this time. But I also ran into some really bad matchups. Again, I'll talk about all of this in another video where I do a full event recap because it's actually pretty funny, and I did get pretty tilted. So, it hurts at the time, but later on you can look back at it and kind of laugh at it. But 5-2-1, 28th place out of 180 plus players. I still got 8 championship points. Had an absolute blast building this. I really felt like with this deck, like I like painted the Mona Lisa, you know what I mean? It was like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool concept, and I'm having so much fun with it. I just never have as much fun as playing Hold Hostage. Hold Hostage with a defensive 7-hander is like the definition of fun in Universes. So if you can find a character to play this in, highly encourage it. If you'd like to play a mill style deck, give it a shot. I will say it's an 86 card deck. We're running a very low attack ratio, but we're also running very high asset and action ratios. So the deck can be clunky in your early turns, just as a fair warning. Especially going first on turn 1, you can sometimes get stuck with like 3 foundation hands. Typically, you can recover from it. because of how defensive Rodan is on face and how defensive the build is and how many hand traps like barrier shield you have, you can recover from a bad turn, and over the course of the next couple turns, build your stage up to where it's a just defensive wall, an absolute you cannot get through this wall of defense. But your early turn might be kind of difficult. It's almost nice going second with this deck. I would still rather go first. I will always rather go first in universes. But going second in this deck does feel nice in the sense that you can toss away those assets and actions and attacks and find more foundations to have less clunky turn one builds, because when you're playing 19 actions and assets, that can just kind of happen. But it was an absolute blast. Will I play it again? Probably not. I think I'm going to put the deck away, move on to something else. I've got a local championship this weekend. I'll probably be playing Midoriya 6, the new Challenger Series version, or Paul Phoenix, or I might play Levi. I bought an alternate art Levi from Rochester at the event, so maybe I'll sleeve that up and give Levi a run. We'll just have to see. But I think I'm all done with Ultra Control Rodan for now. It was a blast to play. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. I'll see you guys next time.